going to continue with the French Revolution here. Last time we talked about wars of the French Revolution. We talked about execution of the king and queen, the Great Terror, and Robespierre, his execution. We get by the mid-1790s, we get to a new development, the creation of the Directory. And now I want to introduce one of the most fascinating figure to emerge from the Revolution, and that's Napoleon. Napoleon had gone, first of all, Napoleon had been a key military figure through the Revolution so far, in that he defended it. And he became increasingly essential to revolutionary success, and his prestige was growing. And people were beginning to recognize that they had an extraordinary soldier here on their hands. Napoleon, of course, will go to Egypt in an attempt to cripple the British Empire, their position there in Egypt, a key strategic position. Napoleon kind of gets stranded in Egypt, and his prestige could have taken a fatal blow here. But he makes his way back to Paris, and upon his return, he organizes a coup, and he overthrows the Directory. Napoleon becomes first consul of France. He forms or establishes a concordat with the church, an agreement with the church. This concordat says that Catholic worship is restored in France. Again, the revolutionaries were attempting to eradicate the church and its influences. Again, the church is one of the feudal orders, one of those traditional sources of authority that the revolutionaries are trying to strike down. Napoleon reinstates the church to a degree. Of course, the lands of the church that were confiscated by the revolution, they're gone forever. The church can kiss that goodbye. And Napoleon declared himself Emperor of France in 1804. Napoleon is the great irony of the French Revolution. If you think about the sort of the fundamental changes that take place in France with the destruction of the feudal orders and the elevation of the common man, the execution of the king and queen. Yet on the other end of the revolution, you get another strong man on horseback, an emperor, Napoleon. And we'll talk about Napoleon in our next lecture. What I want to do now is go through a list of consequences or significances of the revolution. In France, despotism, tyranny, absolutism are discredited by the revolution. And of course, France sets an example for surrounding countries regarding attitudes towards absolutism. The nobility's privileges are abolished. We've said that a half a dozen times, and it bears repeating. The feudal dues are overturned. The peasantry is no longer under the thumb of the nobility, the landlords. Corporatism, monopolies are disbanded. Guilds are disbanded. These are defined as working against the public interest. The church, of course, is the greatest corporation in France. The confiscation of church lands spell the end of the church's independence. The church essentially becomes a department of state. The church has the dissolution of various monasteries, abrogation of monastic vows. The revolution also brings to an end this notion of dynastic marriage, where royal families sort of intermarry throughout Europe to create sort of informal and sometimes formal alliances between states through marriage. We'll talk about this again when we get to the First World War. Slavery. End of French colonial slavery in Haiti in 1793. So you see the revolution is as good as its word in remaking society fundamentally. Of course, Napoleon himself destroys what was left of the old Holy Roman Empire in 1806. We talked about the Holy Roman Empire earlier, this loose confederation of small German principalities and kingdoms that was the object of so much diplomacy through European history, trying to keep Germany divided and weak and small. There's a fear, obviously, of a united Germany, a powerful German state. So the Holy Roman Empire is disbanded, and small, new, weak German states come into being. New Spain. Napoleon, of course, invades Spain. They're just south of the Pyrenees in Europe from France. But New Spain in the New World, that Spanish Empire that was begun by Columbus in 1492, New Spain is going to now begin to break away from the mother country. Napoleon's occupation of Spain demonstrates the Spanish weakness and allows the Spanish kingdoms in the New World to assert their own authority and break away. So we have the emergence of an independent Latin American countries. And then, of course, the ideals of the Enlightenment are confirmed through the Revolution. The end, not the end of monarchy, but the imposition of restraint upon the monarchy, the spreading of political power. The churches corralled, the feudal orders overturned, nobility feudal law disbanded. Anything's possible. The Revolution demonstrates this. Enlightenment skepticism, critical thinking confirmed. Nothing's taken for granted any longer. There are no sacred cows. All institutions are provisional based upon their utility. All power, all authority is provisional, again, based upon their utility. And their social institutions contribute to social justice, or they can be disbanded. The French Revolution confirmed the ideals of the Enlightenment and ushered in the mental world in which we still live. And that's a good place to stop here. We'll do a brief lecture on Napoleon next time. Again, the great irony of the Revolution, Napoleon emerging, a strong man on a horseback, the emperor who crowns himself.